And congratulations to you, dear viewer. You may not have been previously aware, but you are now watching StoryAlity Theory, Episode 1, a K-film by J.T. Velikovsky. What is a K-film, you may well be asking at this point in time. Well, thank you for asking. Korsakov dynamic storytelling is digital storytelling invented by Florian Thalhofer and others, and Florian is of the opinion linearity is overrated. But the question is, how do I watch it? Well, it's quite easy really. After we watch the Korsakov logo appear, we sometimes have to click that one. We are now ready to watch a K-film, such as StoryAlity Theory. And I prefer the full screen view. I might just click that. That's better. So, now we can do as the sign says. And click here, shall we? And we are now watching the first segment, which goes for approximately 2 minutes, of this Korsakov film, StoryAlity Theory. We can see where the progress bar at the top is moving along, and as desired, we can click one of the preview screens down the bottom. Now we see there are 3 preview options, but it is good manners to wait till the progress bar reaches the end of the current segment. What else? Well, we may choose to click on one of the preview screens down the bottom, or simply watch the main stage. We can adjust the volume, much like so. We've already spoken about full screen, and the pause button has predictable consequences. I'll just resume that, shall I? And that pretty much is all there is to it, really. And I certainly hope you enjoy watching the following K-film. As I say, it is good manners to wait until the current loop has finished playing. However, if it's boring, you can certainly click to the next segment. But I say, it is good manners to wait until each sequence has completed. However, some play on a continuous loop, and we may wish to skip past the looping ones so we don't watch them for the rest of our lives. And so sit back and enjoy the 8th wonder of the digital world, that is, the K-film. And a word of warning, the following K-film has been rated S for screenwriter and may bore normal people, and of course, being to do with film, may also feature some wildly inappropriate moments, so just in case, only fair to warn you, sit back and enjoy StoryAlity Theory, a K-film by J.T. Velikovsky. StoryAlity Theory on narrative patterns in the top 20 return on investment feature films. What is ROI exactly? Well, it's return on investment, and that's all well and good, but how does it work? Well, say you have a film that costs $1 million to make, and it makes $10 million at the box office. That means you have a 1000% ROI. Put another way, return on investment means audience reach. So we can divide by $10 a ticket, and we've reached 1 million people. But is break-even 100%? No, it's not. If you make a film for $1 million and it makes $1 million at the box office, it's made a loss. Break-even is closer to 373%. The reason for this is there are additional costs such as exhibition, distribution, and marketing, etc. So you need to make 3.25 times your budget to make a profit. Notably though, the top 20 return on investment films made 7,500% or greater, 75 times their budget. Good Lord. By contrast, most Hollywood blockbusters usually only make around 10 times their budget, or say a 1000% return on investment, such as the film Avatar by James Cameron and many others, which made a 1175% ROI. So what are the top 20 return on investment films? What are the top 20 return on investment feature films of the past 70 years, and why should we look at them? Furthermore, why not look at the past 100 years of cinema? Well, 70 years ago, essentially, everything changed in the feature film industry. The famous Hollywood antitrust case of 1948 meant that the face of the feature film industry changed forever. This was also known as United States versus Paramount Pictures Incorporated and others. For you see, prior to 1948, the film industry was vertically integrated, so studios, distributors, exhibitors, and cinemas were locked. It was difficult to get your film played in a different cinema. But after 1948, everything changed. It was pretty much a free-for-all. You could play your film in whichever cinema you jolly well liked. So, the top 20 ROI films of the past 70 years are, and coming in at number 20, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, made for a budget of $5 million. 19, Star Wars 1977, $11 million. Full Monty, $3.5 million. E.T., $10.5 million. Evil Dead, $375,000 budget. Primer, $7,000. Good lord, that's cheap. Saw, $1.2 million. Friday the 13th, $500,000, give or take. Open Water, $500,000 again, roughly. Napoleon Dynamite, $0.4 million. Once, $150,000 budget. Clerks, $27,000 budget, quite cheap really. American Graffiti, $777,000. Halloween, $325,000. Rocky, coming in at $1 million neat. Night of the Living Dead, $114,000. El Mariachi, another cheapie, $7,000. The Blair Witch Project, $600,000. Number 2, Mad Max, $200,000. And coming in at number 1, the film Paranormal Activity, made for a budget of $15,000, a box office of $197 million, and an ROI of $1,311,211%. Quite a tidy little profit, really. So these are the top 20 most profitable return on investment films of the past 70 years. StoryAlity theory: patterns in the top 20 return on investment feature films on frequency. In other words, how often do top 20 ROI films come along? Well, when we look at the data set, in the top 10 feature films we see a 10-year gap from 1983 to 1993. And in films 11 through to 20, we note another phenomenon, namely that 4 films appeared at once in 2004, which becomes particularly interesting when we graph it. So, beginning with Night of the Living Dead, 1968, then we see American Graffiti, 73, Rocky, 76, Star Wars, 77, Halloween, 78, 2 films in 1980, Mad Max and Friday the 13th, E.T. in 1982, The Evil Dead, 1983, then we see the 10-year gap until El Mariachi in 1993. Then we have Clerks 94, Full Monty 97, Blair Witch Project 99, My Big Fat Greek Wedding in 2002. Then the 4 films appear: Primer, Saw, Open Water and Napoleon Dynamite, all in 2004. Following this we have Once in 2007, and finally Paranormal Activity in 2009. So, what this suggests, looking at the 10-year gap, 83 to 93, and the 4 films that emerged in 2004, is what is called in the stock market a phenomenon known as a market correction, which is really quite fascinating and most likely suggests a system. So if this frequency pattern every 2.05 years does indeed suggest a system in operation, what would the feature film industry look like if we modeled it as a system? How does the feature film industry look when we model it as a system, using agent-based modeling, which has nothing to do with a literary agent who's a man who tries to sell your script? Take a blank screen, divide in 2 for the Cartesian duelists. This would be the icon for screenwriters and regular people in our model. This would be the icon for bad screenplays, 9 of which are written before a good or creative screenplay is written, generally speaking. This would be the icon for film producers, note the tie, suit, and briefcase. And film producers generally make 9 bad movies before they make a good one, or one that the field judges creative as such. And this then is how the film industry looks when modeled as a system using agent-based modeling. From the side it looks particularly messy, 45 degrees, not much better, and I prefer the isometric view, if you will. Let us zoom in to the domain of films and screenplays judged creative by the field. X marks the spot. This is where, by all accounts, you would like your film or screenplay to be, and yourself, if you are a screenwriter, judged creative. And there we have it. Quite messy, really, a bit like the real world. And if you would like to have a play with this model yourself, all you need do is log on to the StoryAlity weblog at storyality.wordpress.com. On agent-based modeling using NetLogo. Using agent-based modeling, we can model how creative teams form in the film industry, and also how forest fires spread like wildfire, much like a viral film, and even how viruses spread through populations within biological systems. And of course, we can even model how cancer cells work, much like when a very bad film gets a very big marketing budget. We can also model how rumors spread through societies, which is, of course, much like how a film meme spreads through the culture. For example, the film is released in many different cinemas, and we can even model the world-famous Mandelbrot set using chaos theory, and of course, complexity theory comes into play with the many systems involved in modeling the feature film domain as a system, like so. This agent-based model of the feature film system allows us to note how many writers and producers there are within the field in the system, how many screenplays and how many films are being produced, and how many of those are entering the domain of works judged creative, such as the top 20 return on investment feature films. This modeling of the system also allows us to make predictions, given that the Top 20 ROI films appear every 2.05 years on average. Therefore, StoryAlity theory allows for various predictions given the modeling of the feature film domain as a system, which leads us to the creative practice theory systems model of creativity, where we have a person or agent who enters the field and internalizes the domain, after which point they may create a creative artifact, such as a top 20 return on investment feature film. And this model is called the creative practice theory model, a synthesis of the work of Csikszentmihalyi and Bourdieu. And for more, see episode 2 of StoryAlity theory, narrative patterns in the top 20 ROI films. And for more, visit the StoryAlity weblog at storyalitywordpress.com. So, using StoryAlity theory to look at some counterintuitive, or shall we say surprising findings in a scientific and empirical study of the top 20 return on investment feature films of the past 70 years. And our data set, of course, for this study is the top 20 audience reach when compared to budget feature films, shown at the bottom right shoulder of the graph, compared to the bottom 20 ROI at the bottom left-hand corner of the graph. These films appear every 2.05 years on average, and of course the top 20 return on investment films reveal certain interesting film patterns, namely 18 of the top 20 are independent films or non-Hollywood productions, only 2 are in fact Hollywood films, only 2 had marquee name directors, being Lucas and Spielberg, none of the 18 independents had big marketing budgets, and of course came from places such as Australia, the UK, even Mexico, and all 20 of the top 20 ROI films were created by writer hyphenates, namely writer-actors, writer-directors, writer-producers, sometimes all 3 at once. This of course correlates nicely with the findings of D.K. Simonton in Great Flicks, namely that critical success is usually achieved by a writer-director, as opposed to those who separate their production roles into one single role, such as a writer. So, story patterns in the top 20 ROI films include all of them are in fact a 2-act structure, not 3-act as per Aristotle. None of them have transformational character arcs, usually they're just trying to get away from a bloody great shark. None have stars in them, all are villain triumphant stories, and the story structure is usually in 10 parts and includes the golden ratio. The number of scenes and number of minutes in the top 20 ROI films reveals an interesting pattern. A tendency we can predict is towards 90 minutes in duration, or for the screenwriters out there, 90 screenplay pages in your script. And so, we can safely ignore the current screenwriting convention, which tells us we should have 3-act structure, character arcs, or a hero triumphant story. These ideas are in fact irrelevant to writing a high return on investment feature film. Notably, the screenplay gurus do not use a scientific method. The problem being that 7 in 10 feature films lose money, which is not very good if you're a screenwriter. Also, another problem is that 98% of screenplays remain unproduced. Therefore, since the screenwriting convention is not scientific or empirical, we can ignore it. On the other hand, Great Flicks is a perfect example of an excellent study using the scientific method with regard to feature films, as does StoryAlity, of course, being an empirical data set of the top and bottom 20 ROI films, that, as I say, we can safely ignore the current screenwriting convention. With the top 20 ROI films, we arrive at a different set of conventions, namely 10-part structure, no character arcs, and a villain triumphant story. And if this and other findings are of interest in the top 20 ROI films of the past 70 years, visit the StoryAlity weblog. Turning now to the StoryAlity theory on the screenwriting convention. And what do we mean by the phrase the screenwriting convention? Well, of course, we mean the literature from script gurus such as Sid Field, Linda Seeger, Christopher Vogler, Michael Haig, and others such as Truby, McKee, Stefanik, Blake Schneider, and the like. And of course, the screenplay gurus have many books, over 2,500 in fact, from which we find story structural screenplay templates. And of course, these suggest exactly what should be happening on which page of your screenplay. However, when we look at the screenwriting convention as a whole, including Aristotle's influence with poetics from 2,000 years before film was invented, we have what is called a screenwriting convention, or a set of beliefs, and the premises of which include, among others, that we need a 3-act structure in our screenplay, dating back to Aristotle's Poetics, of course, character arcs whereby the hero is transformed during the course of the story, and a hero triumphant ending to the story, generally speaking. However, this is somewhat problematic because the scriptwriting gurus as a whole do not use a scientific or empirical methodology. Rather, they tend to use illustrative examples which correlate with their theories. Therefore, the screenwriting convention as a whole can be seen as problematic. A key problem with the film and screenwriting domain being that 7 in 10 films lose money, which is not very good for 70% of films, probably because the screenwriting convention is not scientific and empirical in its methodology. However, distinguished Professor D.K. Simonton has led the way with his scientific studies of cinematic creativity and aesthetics in the book Great Flicks, published in 2011, and by scientific studies of film we mean abstract, systematic, objective, and quantitative. And just as a reminder, the scientific method involves formulating a question, after which we construct a hypothesis. This leads to research and observations, testing and experiment, and we are then able to analyze our results and conclude if this confirms our hypothesis. Well, if not, we may need to start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. But on the other hand, if this does in fact confirm our hypothesis, we are then able to publish our results of our scientific study in some kind of a report, preferably an academically peer-reviewed one. Therefore, I highly commend to you Great Flicks 2011 by D.K. Simonton. StoryAlity, of course, also uses a scientific and empirical method in the study of screenplays, looking at the top 20 return on investment feature films compared with the bottom 20. As a result, we have a list of characteristics that the top 20 return on investment films share, and we note it has nothing to do with the current screenwriting convention. Alternatively, StoryAlity theory uses 10-part structure, no character arcs, and generally a villain triumphant story. If this is of interest, visit StoryAlity.wordpress.com.